Summary of Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. Antoinette Cosway, a Creole, a person from the Caribbean with European roots, talks about her childhood at Colibri, her family's farm in Jamaica in the 1830s. Her mother, Annette, and her younger brother, Pierre, who has a mental disability, are living alone and without money since her father died and the Emancipation Act of 1833 freed Jamaica's slaves. Annette begins to behave in a withdrawn distress, avoiding Antoinette and talking with herself instead. Antoinette seeks safety in the gardens and along with the nurse Christophine, who is well known for her practice of obia, a form of folk magic that is similar to voodoo. Tia is a little black girl that Antoinette makes friends with for a short time. But while they're swimming, they fight over a bet, and Tia takes Antoinette's money and clothes. Annette vows to get the family out of poverty after seeing Antoinette in Tia's dirty dress. She soon married Mr. Mason, an Englishman with a lot of money. Mr. Mason is remodeling Colibri from top to bottom. People in the nearby town of poor former slaves are angry at the show of showy wealth. Because Annette and Aunt Cora are afraid of getting hurt, they tell Mr. Mason to get the family out of harm's way, but he doesn't listen. A group of people set fire to the house at Colibri one night. The family just barely gets away, but Pierre is badly hurt. Antoinette gets a fever that lasts for 6 weeks. She finds out that Pierre has died and that her mother Annette is being cared for at a country home for sick people when she finally wakes up. She goes to see her, but when she gets there, her mother is so upset that she can't be recognized. Antoinette starts going to a school for girls only in a convent. The nuns there teach their kids to be chaste and behave well, and they put a lot of value on how they look. The routines of the nuns make Antoinette feel better, but prayer doesn't help her believe or find comfort. After 18 months, Annette has died, and Mr. Mason comes to see her to tell her that he is taking her out of the convent school because he thinks she has a lover waiting for her. Antoinette keeps having dreams that a stranger is taking her through the woods and up some stairs. Part 2 of the book starts on the island of Granbois, which is close to Jamaica, where Annette and her new husband are on their honeymoon. The husband, an unnamed Englishman, feels threatened by the strange scenery, language, and customs of the Caribbean. This part of the story is told from his point of view. He doesn't trust the maids, especially Christophine and Amélie, who is young and stubborn. He married Antoinette for her money and thinks of her as a pretty but scary stranger. They swim in the afternoons and make wild love at night. One day, the husband gets a letter from Daniel Cosway, who says he is Antoinette's half-brother and the child of an affair between her late father, old Cosway, and one of his slaves. The letter tells the husband that both parts of Antoinette's family are crazy, with rumors that both her mother and father died raving. Daniel Cosway is adamant that Antoinette's family, especially Richard Mason, lied to the husband when they set up the marriage. The husband doesn't tell Antoinette about this letter, instead, he grows cold and distant. Christophine leaves Granbois because she doesn't like the husband, which makes Antoinette very sad. Soon after Christophine left, her husband got lost in the woods and is sure he saw a zombie, or walking dead, near an empty house. Baptiste, the butler, finally finds him, but he won't tell him anything about the house. The story is now told from Antoinette's point of view. She begs Christophine to use obia on her husband to make him love her again. At first, Christophine says no and tells Antoinette to do what she thinks is best. But Antoinette wears her down in the end, and Christophine gives her a bottle of drink. The story goes back to being told from the husband's point of view. He goes to see Daniel Cosway, who tries to force the husband to give him $500 by threatening him. The husband and Antoinette fight that night, and he wants to know the truth about her past. She tells him that Colibri is on fire, that Pierre has died, and that her mother is going crazy. It turns out that her mother was raped at the home where she was getting better. She doesn't like it when her husband starts calling her Bertha. After going to bed, Antoinette gives her husband a glass of wine. He cannot remember what happened the rest of the night. He finds out that Antoinette gave him drugs in the morning and runs into the woods. Amélie takes care of him when he gets back, and they sleep together. If he comes out of his room, Antoinette has already left the house because she heard them making out in the next room. A few days later, she comes back with Christophine. While Antoinette locks herself in her room and drinks too much, Christophine and her husband fight. When Christophine's husband says he will call the police and report her habit of disobeying, she has no choice but to give in. She goes without telling Antoinette goodbye. Their husband makes the choice that they need to leave Jamaica. On the day they leave, Antoinette is cold and quiet. The husband feels terrible about what he did, but his hate for Antoinette quickly takes over. Part 3 starts from the point of view of Grace Poole, who is taking care of Marie Antoinette in England. It turns out that Antoinette is being held against her will in the attic of the husband's house. Grace Poole doesn't like living there, but she is paid twice as much as the other maids for keeping quiet. The story is told from Antoinette's point of view. She has no idea where she is or how much time has gone by. She takes Grace Poole's keys a lot and looks around the house at night. Grace Poole tells her one day that the night before, Richard Mason came to see Antoinette and pulled a knife on him. This is not something Antoinette remembers. That night is the last time she has her nightmarish dream. It is clear that the steps she has dreamed about her whole life led her here. This time, she lights a candle and sets the house on fire. She then sits on the roof and thinks about the fire at Colibri while she watches the house burn. She hears her husband calling her in the dream and jumps to her death. When she wakes up, she feels like she has a mission. She lights a candle and goes downstairs to act out her dream.
About the author. Ella Gwendolyn Rhys Williams was born in 1890 on the British colony island of Dominica in the Caribbean. Her parents were a Welsh doctor and a Creole woman with Scots roots. When she was 16, she was sent to England to learn how to be an actor. Williams had a hard time in school because people didn't like her because she was from the Caribbean and spoke with a West Indian accent. Eventually, she was kicked out because her teachers thought she couldn't get rid of her accent, which would keep her from getting important stage parts. Then she lived in Britain for almost 10 years, getting by with small acting roles and chorus girl jobs, as well as short stints as a nude model and prostitute. Williams started writing after having an almost fatal abortion that was paid for by an ex-lover. While Ella Williams was going through a rough marriage in 1924, she met the famous English author Ford Madox Ford. Ford both taught her and slept with her. He suggested she change her name to Jean Rhys and finally helped get her work published. A lot of it was about how she felt alone as a woman because of unfair lovers and a society that didn't accept her. Rhys wrote 3 major novels in the 1930s, after leaving Mr. Mackenzie, Voyage in the Dark, and Good Morning, Midnight. These books got mixed reviews from critics. After several decades of staying out of the public eye, 2 more failed marriages, and a problem with alcoholism that got worse, Rhys finally became famous as a writer when he released Wide Sargasso Sea in 1966. Wide Sargasso Sea is still her most famous work. It won her a lot of awards and has a place in the canon of post-colonial writing in English. Rhys died in Exeter, UK, in 1979.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.